Being black in history was chill, super fair, no problems at all. Yeah, we all know this wasn't the case. Let's not pretend. If history was a team project, black people were the ones doing all the work, getting none of the credit, and still somehow being blamed when it went wrong. This isn't just a sad story. This is the real truth about how it was like being black throughout history. Before Europe even figured out how to wash regularly, Africa was already out here building empires. Yeah, empires, with pyramids, trade routes, libraries, and laws. We're talking about places like Nubia, Mali, Songhai, and Ethiopia. These weren't just little tribes with face paint and drums. No offense to face paint and drums. These were full-on kingdoms with kings, queens, armies, and more gold than a YouTuber's dream house. Let's talk Egypt for a second. Hollywood likes to pretend all the pharaohs were just tan Europeans with eyeliner. But geographically, genetically, and historically, black. Deal with it. Northern Africa didn't suddenly become part of Africa in the 2000s. It was always Africa. And people living there, also African. Who knew? Meanwhile, across the continent, cities like Timbuktu had universities before most of Europe knew how to spell university. People were studying astronomy, math, medicine, basically the stuff textbooks pretend came out of nowhere in the Renaissance. But for a long time, skin color wasn't the main thing people judged each other for. Sure, folks fought over land and power because humans gonna human, but back then no one looked at dark skin and said, that person is less than me. Blackness wasn't a problem in history until someone decided to make it one, and that's where everything became awful, really awful. Starting in the 1400s, Europeans decided Africa wasn't just full of cool resources and gold, it was also full of free labor. And by free, I mean they kidnapped millions of people, shoved them onto ships, and sent them across the ocean like packages nobody asked for. This was the transatlantic slave trade. For over 400 years, millions of African people were taken from their homes, forced into boats with almost no space to breathe, and shipped to the Americas. Many died before they even got there. Those who survived were sold like animals and forced to work for life. This wasn't just about racism, it was also about money. Slavery made people very rich. Whole countries built their wealth on free labor from stolen humans. Sugar, cotton, tobacco, those cash crops didn't plant or pick themselves. And while enslaved people were working from sunrise to sunset, the people in charge were writing things like, all men are created equal. Seriously. Founding fathers in the US were fighting for freedom while owning people. The math is not mathing. Families were ripped apart. Culture was erased on purpose. Language, religion, names, all stripped away so people could be controlled. But even then, black people resisted. They ran, they fought, they rebelled. The story of slavery is insane because people survived something they were never meant to survive. And just to make sure no one forgets how bad it was, a lot of countries kept this system going for centuries. The US didn't officially end slavery until 1865. Brazil held on to it even longer, until 1888. This was one of the darkest chapters in human history, but that was not even all. So slavery was awful, but when that started ending, Europe was like, well, we still want Africa's stuff. And just like that, colonialism stepped in. In the late 1800s, European countries had a big meeting called the Berlin Conference, without inviting a single African person, and basically divided up the entire continent like a pizza. Britain got a slice. France got a slice. Belgium took a slice and lit it on fire. Colonialism was sold as a civilizing mission, like Europe was doing Africa a big favor. But really, it was all about stealing land, gold, diamonds, rubber, oil, you name it. They took resources, made locals work for almost nothing, and set up governments where Africans had zero power in their own countries. One of the worst examples, the Congo under Belgium's king, Leopold II. The guy turned the whole place into his personal money-making nightmare. If workers didn't meet rubber quotas, their hands were cut off. This is not a metaphor. Literal hands. Gone. Colonialism lasted decades, some places even longer. When countries finally got independence, they were left with messed up borders, broken economies, and leaders handpicked by the same folks who messed it all up in the first place. It wasn't just land theft, it was language theft, name changes, forced religion, and being told your culture was savage. It was domination, plain and simple. So no, colonialism wasn't a cultural exchange. It was a hostile takeover. And Africa is still dealing with the aftershocks today, just wait for it. America loves to call itself the land of freedom. But for black people, that freedom came with a whole lot of fine print, and none of it was good. First, slavery. For over 200 years, black people were owned in the U.S. and treated as property, not people. And don't let old movies fool you. There was nothing simple or peaceful about it. It was violent, it was cruel, and it was legal. Even after slavery ended in 1865, things didn't suddenly get better. Instead, the U.S. hit copy-paste on racism with new rules called Jim Crow laws. These laws made sure black people stayed separate but equal, which really meant separate and worse. Different schools, different water fountains, different everything, and none of it fair. Lynchings were common. Voting was blocked with tricks like literacy tests and poll taxes. Black families were pushed into poor neighborhoods while banks refused them loans. Even the government got in on it. Look up redlining if you want to see legal racism in action. But here's the wild part. Through all of this, black Americans still helped build the country. Literally. They worked the fields, built the railroads, fought in wars. Black soldiers fought for freedom overseas in every war America had, only to come home and be treated like second-class citizens. And yet, the culture, music, food, fashion, so much of what makes America cool came from black communities. Even under pressure, black people created joy, style, and resistance. So yeah, America promised life, liberty, and happiness. But for black people, it handed over chains, and a long wait for justice. But how did slavery exactly disappear then? Well, in the 1950s and 60s, black Americans had had enough. Tired of being told to wait for change, they hit the streets, sat at lunch counters, marched, sang, and sometimes got arrested just for existing in the wrong place. This was the civil rights movement, and it was led by people like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and a whole bunch of others. These folks weren't asking for anything wild, just equal rights, fair treatment, and not to be killed for walking down the street. They faced water hoses, police dogs, angry mobs, and a government that pretended to listen while secretly spying on them. Hey, FBI. But change did happen. Laws were passed. Schools were desegregated. The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act made it harder to be openly racist with a badge. But here's the plot twist. Racism didn't disappear. It just got sneakier. Instead of whites-only signs, we now got underfunded schools and random traffic stops. Instead of mobs, we got media spin. Instead of progress, we got performative allyship. That thing where companies post Black Lives Matter online, but don't hire or promote any black people in real life. Fast forward to today, people protest police brutality, speak up on social media, and try to hold the system accountable. But they still face pushback. From politicians, from trolls, from people who think racism ended just because Obama got elected. Lol. Did you even know that the weirdest part of all is that the same world that mistreated black people for centuries can't stop copying them? Yeah, just wait for it. Music? From jazz and blues to hip-hop and rap, black people created sounds that changed the planet. Fashion? Trends start in black neighborhoods and end up on runways. Slang, internet memes, TikTok dances. Yep, again, it's like everyone loves the style of blackness, but wants none of the struggle. You'll see celebrities rocking box braids or saying woke, but when real issues come up, crickets. Or worse, fake support for likes. This is what people mean by cultural appropriation. When something meaningful gets copied without giving credit or respect. Like taking soul food recipes but acting shocked by racism in the South. And no, it's not about not sharing. Black culture has always influenced the world. The problem is when people profit off it while ignoring the people who made it. Remember?